Yeah, I mean, something about some coach on the other side of the ball that LSU fans have seen or heard of makes this week a little special. And, it's been a pretty weird atmosphere, exciting around Baton Rouge for, I'd say, about 10 days now.
It's almost getting to the point where, like, Saban coming back is, like, the biggest, the little smallest story. You consider everything else. You consider, yes, he's been here before. Like, that's the same old song and dance. But I think in LSU's fans, in their minds, the Saban coming back to Tiger Stadium is the smallest story in this whole game. And that's really unprecedented when you think of, Saban obviously built up LSU. Now he went to Alabama. It's a very controversial thing, but at the same time, there's a lot bigger things going on in this ball game. There's playoff implications on the line, like you said.
Well, the fact that it's been how many years since Nick Saban's left now, it's kind of a good thing that it's becoming less and less of a story because, honestly, in my opinion, the fact that he's been focused on so much kind of takes away from the game in the past. Because it's two great teams. Yes, he was the coach of LSU, obviously, and yes, it's a storyline. A lot of fans will never get over the fact that he left LSU. But, yeah, like you said, it's great that we're actually focusing on the game now, the players, the storylines, the implications, and not just Nick Saban. He's a big part of it, but he's not the whole story.
And this Nick Saban coach ball club, obviously, in the midst of a dynasty on the downfall, dynasty coming up, whatever you want to call it, this Alabama team is impressive again, but a much different Alabama team. There's no A.J. McCarron. There's no C.J. Mosley on defense. A different look both offensively and defensively for Alabama this season. Got a new offensive coordinator in Lane Kiffin. We'll get to that. But to start this KLSU Tailgate show, we're going to get started breaking down the LSU offense against this Alabama defense. An Alabama defense known in the past having guys that are going to be in the NFL next year. Maybe only one of them on that defense will be playing in the league next year, Landon Collins. You want to talk about a storyline, there's one in itself right there. But, Sam, this Alabama defense, it's not the one we've been accustomed to.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if LSU can move the ball against them, first and foremost. It's an Alabama defense that their strengths are stopping the run, not what you want to hear as an LSU fan. But there's definitely some holes in that secondary where if, get a couple of plays on the outside, receivers could get open, and, it's a defense that can be exploited.
Morgan, how confident are you this LSU offense really controlled that game 2 weeks ago against Ole Miss, supposedly the best defense in the nation, we thought, Ole Miss. How confident are you of this LSU offense going against the Alabama defense?
Well, 2 weeks ago, the best defense LSU had faced this season was Ole Miss, and that was true. And statistically speaking, I think they may be better than Alabama so far this season. But Les Miles said in his press conference on Monday, this Alabama defense is actually the most physical, the most imposing defense they probably will play thus far, and for the rest of the year, obviously. And it's always that other level. Nothing that even the stats won't say or even, height and weight won't even measure up. It's the fact that it's LSU-Alabama and these teams, the way they play, that mirror each other so much. And you go back to 2012 or 2011, game of the century. The most intense defensive battle I've ever seen in any football, NFL, high school, college, anything. And I think no matter the teams, and even though they're not at the level they were, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I think we're going to see that same physical style. And even Nick Saban said in his press conference earlier this week, LSU's a physical team. They're playing physical. Players like Kendall Beckwith coming into the lineup, making big hits all over the field. The defensive line coming into their own. Both sides. And I think the chances for LSU, they had a test against Ole Miss. Now they're going to have another test against Alabama. But you have to like their chances anytime. It's going to be ground game versus ground game.
Well, my thing is there's one team that has shown they can consistently shut down LSU's run game, and it's Alabama.
Yep.
We've seen this game come down to who has more rush yards for the past 4 years, I believe, is whoever has had more rush yards wins the game. And with LSU being such a one-trick pony, you got to figure Alabama's going to load the box, 10 guys in, shoot the gaps, and try to get in that backfield and disrupt it. And when LSU does drop back to pass, make sure that Jennings doesn't have time to find open receivers.
Now, Sam, Morgan mentioned game of the century, 2011, great game 2012. Those games, that Alabama defense built on a 3-4 look, guys to control the trenches. You think LSU, Alabama, you think battle of the trenches. This LSU O-line against this Alabama defense, what do you think what are we looking for?
Well, LSU's O-line has been good. They've shown improvement probably just about every game this season. I would say post-Auburn. They've looked better every single week, and that's why we've seen LSU just go on this tear rushing the ball. Just these over 200-yard games rushing easy. And it's going to have to come down to that game in the trenches. And as we were talking about earlier, Tom, that 4-3 switch, really interesting to see Alabama make that.
Yeah, they don't quite have the guys on the D-line that they've had in years past. You think about impact guys who can control 2 or 3 guys, get 2 or 3 linemen on them. They don't have the guys that quite require that attention, more forward down linemen. They're going to have Landon Collins in the box, try and stop that run. I'm very confident about this LSU O-line, though.
And going back to the LSU offensive line, if this game were 4 weeks ago, I would say Alabama's going to win this one far and away with the way the offensive line played earlier this season, as evidence against Mississippi State and Auburn specifically. But now the offensive line coming into this year, they were saying LSU probably has the most experienced, best overall group of offensive linemen coming into the SEC, if not the entire nation. For the first few games, it didn't look that case. It didn't look to be that way. Maybe a new zone scheme they were implementing with the offensive line coach. But now, as we see with the younger players on defense now, they're coming into their own. The offensive line is also doing the same thing. And I think as a group, they're playing with a sense of cohesiveness. They're all on the same page. And like I said, the little schemes that they've been implementing this season have now kind of showing, paying dividends. And they're all on the same page finally, it seems like.
Yeah, this LSU line, you talk about a first-round draft pick, maybe even top 10 at left tackle, and Lyle Collins, the leader of this team, coming in for senior night for him. You talk about stories. Another story, last game in Tiger Stadium for a lot of LSU Tigers, 22, I believe, is the number. That's something that these guys, Tiger Stadium, I think, far and beyond the best stadium in college football, best atmosphere. This is going to be their last time lining up in that stadium. So I'm looking forward to those guys coming out for their last game. Now let's talk about the LSU running backs. In my opinion, the best running back group in the nation, even better than the team they're facing. Against this Alabama linebackers and secondary, it's going to be probably the best head-to-head matchup college football will see this season.
Well, Fournette, who's going to take the lead this game? We're talking off air. Kenny Hilliard might have a chance to make a name for himself this game as he has earlier this season, especially against Ole Miss in that last drive. But it's really it's LSU's 3 versus Alabama's 2. Derrick Henry, T.J. Yeldon, or Leonard Fournette, Kenny Hilliard, and my name's escaping him. Oh, Terrence McGee, of course, number 18. How can I forget? So it's going to be interesting to see how Les, of course, gives the ball to these running backs. But with the way Fournette, as we said, the offensive line is coming to their own as well. So is Fournette, the freshman. We have to forget, we keep forgetting that. He's actually an incoming freshman, straight out of high school. And even though he looks like a full-blown man, he's still a kid. So even early on in the season against Wisconsin had his struggles. But he's coming to his own just as well as the offensive line. So I think even despite the game last year where LSU only managed, I think, 45 yards rushing, I think it's going to be a little bit different this week, Sam.
Yeah, when you talk about Fournette, this is a game that really looks like it's going to play to his strength, his skill set. He's a more complete back than any of the other backs on LSU's team. I don't think anybody will argue with that, with his combination of size and strength. And that's what we really need. This isn't going to be a game where Kenny Hilliard can just line it up and run through that defense like he did against Ole Miss on that deciding drive. LSU's going to have to really mix it up with these running backs.
LSU was able to control the ball game, running the football against Ole Miss, but Ole Miss, great secondary and great. Well, that's still a debate's out for that. But this Alabama team is built, from the D-line, linebackers, and then the secondary. It's going to be much tougher to run the football, but when you talk about the trio, maybe even quattro of backs LSU can put out there, I'm confident LSU to be able to run the ball. There's 4 running backs. One of them's got to be having a good game, right?
Exactly, and you talk about divvying up the carries. Let me just list out some stats for you. Leonard Fournette leads the team with 657. Terrence McGee has 418 and 3 touchdowns, and Kenny Hilliard has 6 touchdowns himself. So the yards are kind of going in order of the way they've been playing this year, but then you have ones that score more than others, and different times they take over. And as evidence in that Ole Miss game, the fresh legs, everyone likes to talk about. The point of having a stable of backs is to take advantage of a weakened defensive line and bring in those fresh legs. Kenny Hilliard did it last week. Maybe this week it'll be Darrell Williams for chance. You never know. It could be Terrence McGee that'll take over in the fourth quarter. But when you have that many running backs and the odds, the numbers are in LSU's favor specifically. So you never know what you're going to get as far as the output from who, but the output's going to be there, and you like to think LSU's going to do something with at least one of their backs this week.
Yeah, exactly. When you talk about, Sam, them not being able to move the football last year on the ground against this Alabama team, but, I think of C.J. Mosley leading that defense. He's gone. Now they look to trade to Priest, the leader on that defense at the linebacker position. All right, let's move on to, yes, we're going to have to do that too, throw the football. LSU, only touchdown last week was through the air, off of play action. You got to think Cam Cameron is going to use play action in this game to get the ball into the playmaker's hands.
Well, LSU, I think, is tied in the SEC for passing plays of 40 yards or more right now, and that's because of the play action and the ability to beat some teams deep. And we saw it early on against teams like Sam Houston and teams like that. Now, lately, the big plays haven't been as often, but it's still the ability is there, as we saw last week with Trayvon Durrell's touchdown. But Anthony Jennings, his stats don't tell the whole story to me. A lot of people have given him a little bit of grief, not being the most efficient, not being the most accurate quarterback this year. But I think the playmaking ability for him and the receivers, maybe it'll take a little bit of a coverage breakdown from Alabama for a lot of these big plays to happen. But it wouldn't surprise me if I see a couple deep touchdowns from Anthony Jennings to Durrell or even John Diar's.
Yeah, the key for Jennings is getting going early, accuracy, not forcing turnovers. We saw against Ole Miss, he had a couple of interceptions, really could have lost LSU that game, quite frankly. And that's what LSU's quarterback can't do. It's a team that is going to load up on its running game. Obviously, I think they run somewhere about 70 or 80% of the time. So you got to have a quarterback who can go out there and just game manage. Take a card out of Alabama's stack and have a quarterback that goes out and doesn't lose you the game, as opposed to a quarterback who will go out and have to make the plays to win it.
Yeah, say what you want about Anthony Jennings, but he is a leader. He's a winner. He's a competitor. I love the way Anthony Jennings competes. Like you said, say what you want about his efficiency and accuracy. It's true. You can criticize him there, but you can't criticize him as a leader and a guy who can march a team down and win a ball game.
And he's only completing 50% of his passes this year, which obviously is not ideally what you want out of a quarterback. But the plays that the completions that he does have, they come on third downs or it's a big touchdown or a key first down. And to me, that weighs more heavily than being 10 of 16 for a lot of yards. It depends on when you make the plays.
And when you're talking about that, a lot of it, there are definitely some missed short passes where he does just miss them, but most of his pass attempts are downfield.
Yeah.
It's what he's best at. It's what he's most comfortable with. So a 50% completion rate, it's really not that bad when you take that in consideration.
This Alabama D-backs, they're secondary. Some guys are gone. No Ha-Ha Clinton-Dix there. But at the same time, Landon Collins is the leader of that secondary. An Eric Reed type, if you will, straight from the same high school as Eric Reed, same type of guy. I'm ready for LSU fans to give Landon Collins something. I'm hoping he gets trucked in this ball game. Sorry. But going against this secondary, I think LSU can match up. You talk about Trayvon Durrell. You talk about Malachi Dupree, Trey Quinn. I think those three versus this Alabama secondary, when you talk about straight skill set, I'm confident in LSU and their ability to get open, make plays. I want to see Malachi Dupree get the ball in his hands, maybe quick screen or lob in the end zone. I saw him try it a few times against Ole Miss, but it wasn't successful. I'm looking for a little sneaky wide receiver play in this one.
Well, there's not a question that LSU has the wide receiver talent. I mean, we've seen it multiple times this year. Malachi making, ridiculous catches in the corner of the end zone, whether it be from Brandon Harris or Anthony Jennings. And then, of course, people that we keep forgetting to talk about. John Diar's earlier this year, the yak machine. He's like a running back with the ball once he catches it. So I think if there's any one advantage LSU does have in this game, not only for their secondary, I think the LSU secondary is a little bit better than Alabama's, but I think the receivers match up better. And it all goes down to Anthony Jennings. And can he get the receivers the ball? But I think one-on-one matchups, I like these LSU receivers against their secondary.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think LSU's got the receivers for once. It's a pretty deep LSU receiving core. Something to be excited about in Baton Rouge. But I don't have much faith in the play calling. I don't think it's necessarily going to all go on Jennings. It wouldn't surprise me if he missed a screen pass, if he missed a slant that we haven't seen many. But it really just, I don't know. I don't trust Les Miles and Cam Cameron to really switch it up and put him in a position to consistently get those guys the ball.
Sam, so you don't expect LSU to start throwing on first down or second down this game at all?
I don't expect LSU to start throwing on first, second, or third down.
All right, this is the KLSU Tailgate Show. We are live here in the Student Union. Morgan Beard, Tom Dobrez, Sam Evans. Listen to us on www.klsu.fm or www.tigertv.tv, live video stream. Just breaking down this LSU offense versus Alabama defense. I'll wrap it up by saying I think LSU can throw the ball through the air with some smash route combos. Alabama is suspect when you talk about breaking after 10 yards. I'm confident in LSU's ability there. Roll out right. I'm looking for a nice smash route for this game. All right, now we're going to break out the Alabama offense versus LSU defense. No A.J. McCarron. No Eddie Lacy. That young offensive line. But they got Amari Cooper, and they're still Alabama. And Blake Sims, mobile quarterback. Interesting. New taste to Alabama, this mobile quarterback.
Yeah, you don't see that from Alabama ever, especially with their quarterbacks, McCarron, McElroy. Definitely a quarterback of a different mold. And that doesn't bode well for LSU given the quarterbacks they played so far this year. Of course, Nick Marshall is going to do his damage. Of course, Dak Prescott did his damage. But what stood out to me this year was Florida and how Jeff Driscoll was allowed to have, I think, 75 to 80 yards rushing on LSU. Now, no offense to Jeff Driscoll, but if he is able to do that to LSU's defense, Blake Sims might not have the hardest time getting a little bit of yards on the ground either. But Sam, what do you think about this defense? Do you think they've matured and kind of fixed those problems from earlier this year? Or do you think it's going to be more of the same story?
Well, they've definitely gotten better, as we've seen and said earlier in the show. This is a team that has improved across the board in the last month or so, but I don't know if I trust them. They just seem young, inexperienced. They got by on a lot of energy against Ole Miss, had a couple of plays that you got to make to win football games that they just didn't, and frankly, got kind of lucky at the end. So I want to pick this LSU defense. They've got all the tools. They've got the players. They've got the skill. I just don't think they have the experience.
And I will say on the same side, on the other side for Blake Sims, I don't think he has the experience either. If you look at the games this year, they lost Ole Miss on the road and the close one in Arkansas, a game that maybe should have gone to overtime. Arkansas maybe could have pulled that one out had things gone their way a little bit better. But Blake Sims, he hasn't shown the ability to handle the big road test yet. And Tiger Stadium, as we've talked about, is a whole another animal.
Now, he's been here. He's never played here, but he's been here. But, these players and Saban can tell you, listen, it's going to be loud. It's going to be crazy. It's going to be nothing like – but there's nothing like suiting up – I wouldn't know. But there's nothing like suiting up at Tiger Stadium, away team quarterback. Just give Bo Wallace a call. Maybe he can give you some advice. But even that won't help. Blake Sims is in for a rough day with this crowd, all things considered.
Yeah, Bo Wallace, I'm not sure how mentally tough. I don't know how to even read that half the time. But obviously Bo Wallace was affected last week, leaving the game early, drawing with fans on the sideline, drawing with the players. Now, will Blake Sims allow the fans to get in his head this week too? That's really hard to tell. But if Indy Stadium can get to any quarterback's head, it's the fans at Tiger Stadium, obviously.
My only point on that is I'm sure these Alabama fans have heard some loud yelling. They got a coach on the sidelines who can definitely make his voice heard. So they've definitely had some noise in their ears before, and probably more worried about him yelling than any of the LSU fans.
We got about 10 more minutes to break down this game for you. Continue talking about this Alabama offense against this LSU defense. These running backs for Alabama, Derrick Henry, TJ Yeldon, both offer different things. Yeldon more of a patience back. He's going to find the hole. Don't want to bring back memories of 2012 with T.J. Yeldon. Derrick Henry, more of an Eddie Lacy type, come right at you. It's going to be tough to slow down these guys.
Yeah, and what we're going to see here, we've seen how LSU has just gotten abused on the run a couple of times this year. Melvin Gordon in the first half at Wisconsin is probably the most worrisome, I think, if you're a Tiger, because as we've seen, a lot of the damage has come from the quarterback position in a lot of those big defensive letdowns. We're not going to see that this year, or this week. Blake Sims can run, but he's not a super. I mean, he's definitely a dual threat, but that's just not the way their offense works. So definitely much more of a Melvin Gordon style, just a running back coming at you. I actually like LSU's odds, though. I think their run stop has gotten significantly better.
And speaking of why they've gotten better, to me, we're talking a little bit earlier, Kendall Beckwith being inserted into the starting position there at middle linebacker. What he adds to this team, a little faster, a little more, closing ability, can kind of diagnose a play early on, and he's been, making big hits, diagnosing plays from the get-go this year. So I think it's not a coincidence that the uptick in play for him has resulted in a better defensive output for LSU.
Kendall Beckwith, I know you go to lunch with Les. Les Miles' weekly press conference for second week in a row. First guy he mentions.
Yes.
Kendall Beckwith, young. You don't want to talk up a young guy too much, but Les is in love with this guy, as he should be. Him and Quan Alexander versus Derrick Henry and T.J. Yeldon, man, oh, man. You talk about Alabama's linebackers versus LSU's running backs. Man, it's going to be a great game of running backs and linebackers, some of the best in the country coming in Tiger Stadium this Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a game changer. You thought it was going to be kind of a lost step. I know you didn't think anything was going to slow down when Welter left, but you thought there might be some miscommunications. He did a lot of the lining up, and we haven't really seen that. It's been nice. I don't know if Beckwith, the knock on him for so long was he didn't know the playbook. So I don't know if he really got in there and just, did some studying. But there really haven't been those miscommunications we expected, which has really been a huge key for this LSU team's evolution. And
we talked about the offensive line and how they're starting to come in their own and playing together as a unit. I think the same applies for the linebacking core, too. It's crazy that we've taken this long to even mention Quan Alexander, because the type of season he's had is to put it, not to exaggerate, but it's been pretty remarkable. He's all over the field, just the eye test. Every play, it seems like he's always involved in everything. And now with the Kendall Beckwith coming on. Those two, what do they call them now? The Bash Brothers?
Yeah.
I think that's the new nickname going around the locker room. So the fact that they've had a couple more games, the lineups got switched a couple weeks ago. Now they're finally, like the offensive line, having that sense of cohesiveness and playing together as a unit, and as is the whole defense.
Yeah, let's break down this passing game for Alabama against the LSU secondary. Blake Sims, mobile quarterback. You think about LSU in history going against mobile quarterbacks. Blake Sims is not a run-first guy. He's more of a Johnny Manziel. He's not as good as Johnny Manziel, not saying that. But that type of player, well, yeah, he's going to probably try and throw the ball, keep him in the pocket, and you win ball games. LSU had a lot of success going against Johnny Manziel because their defensive ends get upfield, keep him in the pocket. Daniil Hunter, Jamari Rasco have been playing great football, along with most people on this defense. I think LSU is able to keep him in the pocket and make him make throws. He's going to be looking to Amari Cooper. I think LSU has success if they double team him.
I'm glad you mentioned Rasco. That's another guy who's been a little bit overlooked this season. You know, going into this year, everyone's talking about Daniil Hunter and the way he looks and, you know, how just a physically freak that he is. But Rasco, one guy kind of going under the radar, making plays. Once again, that eye test I talked about with Quan Alexander, Rasco is the same thing on the defensive line. And he's been kind of the energy guy for the defense. If you look, he's pumping the team up before the plays, feeding off the crowd, and more often than not, he's been in the backfield causing some disruption, not only in the run game, but in the passing game as well, getting a couple sacks. So I think, like you said, the key, containment. If they cannot allow Blake Sims to have that escapability that he's shown and kind of keep him in the pocket, make him a pass-first quarterback, you have to like LSU's chances, getting maybe a couple sacks this game.
Yeah, I mean, Sims has shown that he will throw the interception. He's not perfect, and that comes with kind of getting him shaken a little bit. He's an old quarterback, like Tom said, doesn't have the game experience. So, yeah, you got to rattle him. And I think LSU definitely has the D-line to, they have the potential to do that.
Now, shutting down Amari Cooper, my personal strategy, what I would do is Jalen Mills, shade over to his side, basically double team him. I don't want Jamal Adams double teaming him because I want Jamal Adams up there to stop the run, causing havoc in the backfield. I want Rashard Robinson or Tre'Davious White. I think they're both capable enough to at least, with the double team help of Jalen Mills, to slow down Amari Cooper.
Yeah, Rashard Robinson, great cornerback at times, and then other times has shown the ability to get beaten deep. Going back to the Auburn game, Sammy Coates, he was in position to make a play, but things didn't go his way. Sammy Coates had a couple touchdowns. So if they can avoid that one-on-one deep coverage from Amari Cooper, because he's the last guy, he's kind of like not as big as Calvin Johnson, but he's the guy you do not want to let one-on-one with any cornerbacks, no matter what caliber. So my strategy would be to do the Calvin to him on defense, bracket him right there at the line of scrimmage with two guys. I don't know how likely that is to happen, but Amari Cooper, the season he's had, 1,300 yards, just putting on a show for Alabama. And Lane Kiffin has got to love his tool over there.
Yeah, and that's something we haven't talked about much is Lane Kiffin and the different play calling that he's brought to this Alabama team. We love poking fun at him. Everybody in the media does. But quite frankly, he's really spiced it up for this Alabama team and given them something they were missing a little bit. But back to Amari Cooper. If you shut him down, you've pretty much bottled up the passing game. He's got 71 receptions on the year. The next closest is 23 with DeAndre White. So, he's got almost 1,000 yards more than any other Alabama receiver. That says it all right there. You just got to double him up like you said. I think that's pretty much the unanimous decision is you throw everything you have at him and say, look, if you want to beat us, make somebody else do it.
And you just got to hope that this isn't one of the games that those unknown receivers for Alabama, say if they do shut down Amari Cooper, you got to hope that it's not one of those games where, person A steps up out of nowhere that maybe has, 15 career catches and is the one to burn LSU this week.
You take your chances with it if you're the Tigers. You make the guy you don't know beat you.
That's why discipline is so important in this ball game. You mentioned we're talking about double teaming Amari Cooper, but then you got guys on an island on the other side of the field. They have to do their role. At the same time, you got to make sure those defensive ends are containing the quarterback. But when you're containing him, got to worry about him running through the middle. You talk about Driscoll beating us on a lot of QB draws. Watch out for that with Blake Sims. If I'm Lane Kiffin, I'm doing a lot of QB draws in this game, looking back to that Florida game where they struggled.
And there's one guy that LSU may have to keep their eye on. He hasn't done much so far this year, but it's the tight end O.J. Howard. Going back to last year, he had the touchdown against LSU. So with all the attention to the running game and the running backs you have to worry about for Alabama and Amari Cooper, one guy that you don't want to forget about is O.J. Howard because he's shown the ability, while it's been few and far between, he can make a big play down the middle for the Alabama offense.
This is the KLSU Tailgate Show, wrapping it up here with our pick-to-click MVP of this game and a score prediction. Morgan, why don't you get us started with a score prediction?
Score prediction. Well, it depends on what you think LSU's what kind of game this will be. Do you think the defense will have their breakdowns and it might be a higher scoring game than anticipated? Of course, that could happen. But me personally, I think it's going to be the knockdown, drag-out, typical LSU-Alabama game we've come to expect. Last year, I think, was an anomaly with a little bit of high scoring that happened for the Alabama side. I'm going this week. I'm going for the upset. I think the Tigers are going to handle them at home. I think it's going to be a close defensive struggle, 17-13. I think it'll be that type of game, and I think LSU pulls the close one out at the very end.
Yeah, Morgan, I'm going to flip it on you. I think this LSU team's improved. I think they're better. I think they'll probably be better than they were against Ole Miss. I think this Alabama team is better than this Ole Miss team that they lost to, and I think they're just too complete. Don't have many weaknesses that I think LSU can take advantage of. So I'm going to have to go Alabama 17, Tigers 13.
Well, 2 weeks ago I picked Ole Miss to win. I was wrong, so hope I'm right this week. I'm going with LSU to win this game. Believe it or not, special teams is going to have the edge in this one. Alabama, believe it or not, probably will miss a field goal. I got LSU winning 20-14, maybe a pick six in there too. Blake Sims had a costly interception against Ole Miss. Coming into Tiger Stadium, Mr. Sims, you don't know what you're in for. Who's your MVP of this one, Morgan?
MVP, pick six, you mentioned it. Maybe Jamal Adams makes a big play like that, or maybe a key sack, strip, fumble, picks for the score. You never know. I like the way Jamal Adams has been playing. He's been all over the field, been the Energizer Bunny for this LSU defense, and I can see that continuing this week.
Yeah, definitely been a nice surprise out of Adams. I'm going to have to go a guy we haven't talked about much. Hasn't been at his best lately, but going to need a big game out of kicker Colby Delahousie. Really like to see LSU have that kicker advantage. They've held over Alabama in the past. I think it's going to come down to field goals.
And me personally, talk about the Quattro trio of backs. I'm going with the guy who had a tremendous second half against Ole Miss. I'd like to see LSU do the same thing this week, kind of wait for the fresh legs to come out. Kenny Hilliard, MVP of this one. Another 50 to 60-yard performance in the second half. I'm looking forward maybe a game-winning touchdown for Mr. Hilliard. This has been the KLSU Tailgate Show. Tom Dobrez alongside Sam Evans and Morgan Beard joining us from Tiger TV. You can watch this stream. I believe it's going to be available on tigertv.tv.com.
That's right, yep.
All right, sounds great. Thanks for tuning in to us, lower level student union. See you next week. Break down the Arkansas game. Catch us on Out of Bounds Sunday from 6 to 7, recapping this LSU hopeful victory.
And the Tiger TV Tailgate Show tomorrow, live outside the Journalism Patio building, previewing all of this and more right before kickoff.
Awesome. Great stuff there. All right, send it back to the studio to Bailey, and then coming right back for an update. Thanks for tuning in to the KLSU Tailgate Show.